Temperatures typically up at 9 or 10 degrees in the south, 7 to 8 degrees further north. Those temperatures head slightly downwards during Saturday and Sunday, but at the same time, most places will see the weather turn drier and brighter, albeit with just 1 or 2 showers.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Well, good morning. This is To The Point on GB News with me, Mercy Muroki, and Patrick Christys on your TV, radio and online. We're here until midday with the day's top stories, lots of discussion, expert guests and our opinions.
Yes, indeed. So make sure that you get in touch with your views. As usual, gbviews at gbnews.uk. We'll be getting to those throughout the show. But first, it's time for your latest headlines.
Good morning, it's 10 o'clock. I'm Rhiannon Jones in the GB newsroom. Conflicting reports are emerging on whether the Ukrainian city of Kherson has been seized by Russian troops. UK intelligence shows Russian forces have entered, but the military situation remains unclear. The Ministry of Defence says the cities of Kharkiv, Chernihiv and Mariupol remain in Ukrainian hands despite heavy shelling. The convoy advancing on the capital, Kyiv, is also said to have made little progress over the past 3 days. Security Minister Damian Hinds says the UK will continue to put pressure on those supporting Putin's regime.
We have sanctioned individuals already, as well as banks, organisations and others. And by the way, we'd already sanctioned many people over what happened in 2014 and for human rights outrages and for anti-corruption reasons already before this further invasion of Ukraine now. We have sanctioned more people now, and there will be more to come. We've always been clear it's a ratchet approach.
Damian Hinds there. Russia and Ukraine continue to record losses as President Putin's invasion continues. Ukraine's Ministry of Defence has posted a photo of a downed Russian jet. It says its forces destroyed 3 planes and 2 helicopters yesterday. Russia claims 500 servicemen have been killed during the conflict so far, while Ukraine puts the figure at 9,000. President Zelensky's advisor, Alexander Rodnyansky, told GB News the Russians are losing the war.
They've failed miserably so far, way beyond what they would have ever expected in the north, in the biggest cities. So in Kharkiv and Kiev, they're not having any success whatsoever, and they're counting heavy losses. So far, it looks like we are actually winning, if you want, because we're counting them much fewer losses, and we have much higher morale.
The latest figures from the UN Refugee Agency show 1 million people fled Ukraine in the past week, but some citizens, like Ksenia Dunkova, believe trying to flee is too dangerous.
This is my home, and so I will stay here, and if somebody will need me, I will try to help. And also, it's very dangerous now to go by car to some to the western region, so that's why I'm just stay home.
The International Criminal Court is launching an investigation into alleged war crimes. In the largest referral in the history of the ICC, the UK and 37 allies have called for a probe into Russia's atrocities. It follows reports that cluster and vacuum bombs were dropped in residential areas. Moscow denies it's targeting civilians. Athletes from Russia and Belarus will not be allowed to compete at the 2022 Winter Paralympics in Beijing. The International Paralympic Committee has reversed its original decision to allow them to take part under a neutral flag. That decision was met by criticism and the threat of a boycott. The IPC says the situation in the athlete villages has become untenable. In other news, here, Sarah Everard's family has been paying tribute to her a year after she was murdered by a police officer. In a statement, they say they miss Sarah all the time and have been overwhelmed by the support from the public. Ms. Everard was killed by serving Met Officer Wayne Cousins as she walked home in South London. Emma Kay, co-founder of the app Walk Safe, says women still feel unsafe on the streets.
The reason why we created it was to try and help inform and empower women, to give them the knowledge that they truly need to be able to keep themselves safer by learning about crime within their local areas. But at the end of the day, Sarah was doing everything right. Sarah could have been myself, Sarah could have been my sister, she could have been a loved one. What happened to her was truly tragic.
The Ministry of Justice plans to close almost half of its Nightingale courts in the UK within weeks. The temporary courts were set up to cope with the backlog of cases during the COVID-19 pandemic. 11 are due to be shut down at the end of the month. The remaining 12 will stay open until March next year. There's more travel chaos in the capital, with commuters in London facing a second 24-hour tube strike in a week. Members of the Rail, Maritime and Transport Union are in a deadlocked dispute over jobs, pay and pensions. And polls are now open in the Birmingham-Erdington by-election triggered by the death of Labour frontbencher Jack Dromey. The former leading trade unionist had represented the constituency since 2010. 12 candidates are standing for the seat, with a result expected late this evening. This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens. Now, though, it's back to Patrick and Mercy with To The Point.
Good morning, everybody. This is To The Point on GB News with me, Patrick Christys, and Mercy Muroki on your TV, radio and online. We've got a great show lined up for you today to kickstart your day. So here's what's coming up.
Yes, the first Ukrainian city reportedly falls to the Russians a week after the invasion began. The mayor of Kherson says the key port city has fallen after a day in which Vladimir Putin's forces bombed schools, hospitals and homes.
The number of people fleeing Ukraine has now topped 1 million, according to the UN. It's now one of the largest and fastest refugee movements that Europe has witnessed since the end of World War II. We'll give you the very latest on updates of the humanitarian effort.
Yes, and Russian billionaire Roman Abramovich has decided to sell Chelsea Football Club days after the threat of sanctions was raised in Parliament. He's promised to donate net profits to the victims of the Ukraine war. But what are his motivations behind the move? We'll discuss.
We will indeed. We have all that coming up and much, much more across the programme as well. You can get in touch, gbviews at gbnews.uk, or of course you can tweet us at gbnews.
Now, a second round of peace talks will take place today between delegations from Ukraine and Russia as Russia's brutal invasion of the country enters its 8th day. The mayor of Kherson says his city has fallen to Russian forces who are urging its residents to obey Russian rule.
Yeah, well, the port city of Mariupol as well has also sustained heavy shelling, with hundreds feared dead. 4 major explosions were also heard in Kiev last night. Meanwhile, the 40-mile Russian convoy that was headed to Kiev has stalled due to Ukrainian resistance, mechanical breakdowns and congestion.
Well, our security editor, Mark White, joins us in the studio to give us the latest. Good morning, Mark. Just fill us in on where we are with this situation.
Yeah, good morning, Mercy. Good morning, Patrick. The talks aimed at trying to find a solution to this horrific conflict are due to resume in the next hour or two. This will be the 3rd time that the delegates from Russia and Ukraine have come together to try to find some kind of common ground. Nothing yet at all. They are very far apart on the objectives of both sides. So it is hoped that perhaps there could be a ceasefire, or at least a cessation of the violence to allow people to flee. But at the moment, for the moment at least, nothing agreed, but those talks due to resume soon. And in terms of the fighting on the ground, it continues to rage. It's not all going Russia's way, or Ukraine's way, I should say. The Ukrainian military say that they have also managed to inflict some casualties on the Russian forces. They said that this morning they have shot down an Su-30 fighter, released images of that shows a fighter aircraft in the sky with a fireball beside that aircraft and someone, it seems, ejecting from the aircraft as well. This, they claim, it takes a total to 6 aircraft that they have shot out of the skies, Russian aircraft that the Ukrainians have shot out of the skies in the past 24 hours. The Russians have also been allowing news crews onto helicopters as they patrol the skies around Ukraine. It's clear they have air superiority, but not necessarily complete control of the skies, judging, of course, by the claims coming out from the Ukrainian military. And on the ground as well, the battle obviously is raging with the Ukrainians, and we've no way of independently verifying this, claiming to have attacked an armoured column in Sumy, in northeast of Ukraine, and to have inflicted overall some 9,000 losses, killed 9,000 Russian military personnel. The Russians deny this. They say that the death toll is 500 still. Even if that is nearer the mark in terms of the numbers killed, it is still a very significant number of troops to have died. In terms of the locations where the fighting is most fierce, Kharkiv up there in the northeast, Mariupol, that port city down in the southeast, and Kherson, also a port city in the south, just north of the Crimean Peninsula. Well, all 3 of those key cities have been, for a number of days now, completely encircled by the forces of the Russian Army, Air Force and Navy. There has been sustained bombardment on those locations. Kharkiv and Mariupol, we're told, remain in Ukrainian hands. But as for Kherson, at this stage, we're just not sure what the exact situation is on the ground. There are Russian forces reported to be in Kherson, but whether they actually have control of the city at this stage, we don't know. As for the capital, Kiev, there again seems to be this slow progress being made by a Russian column heading down towards the capital, still some 30 kilometres from the capital, according to the UK Ministry of Defence. Fierce fighting, though, in towns and cities around the capital, including Borodyanka, where there has been some very significant shelling, air bombardment, residential areas struck by that, and images that have come out in the last 12 hours or so of Borodyanka showing very concerning images about the damage that has been inflicted to residential areas, burning buildings, rescue services, sifting through the rubble, trying to find survivors. In total, the Ukrainian Emergency Ministry had said yesterday that 2,000 civilians had died. They seem to have been rowing back from that figure today and putting the total confirmed losses at almost 300, but it will be significantly more than that in the coming days. And of course, the fighting is also raging out, it seems, in the maritime environment as well. In the Baltic, images released of a Bangladeshi tanker which took a missile strike as it was at the port of Olvia. That tanker was waiting to offload supplies, we understand, when it was struck by a Russian missile, one of a number of vessels that have been hit in recent days. And all the while, of course, the refugee crisis continues to grow. 1 million people, we're told now, have left the Ukraine, heading for neighbouring countries. Images that have come out are absolutely heart-wrenching. Shots of mothers and children leaving the fathers behind, of course, to fight to defend Ukraine as they spill over the borders to Hungary, to Romania, to Slovakia, to Poland. The most refugees have gone to Poland, some 500,000 plus, and still they continue to stream towards the borders of these safer countries.
Mark, thank you very much for filling us all in. A lot to indeed fill us in on, actually. A very, very busy evening for, in all the wrong sense, I suppose, in Ukraine. Thank you very much, Mark White, there, of course, our security editor. Now, earlier this morning, the Minister of State for Security and Borders, Damien Hines, spoke to Breakfast about the support the UK is willing to give to Ukrainians fleeing the Russian invasion.
I think everyone hoped that it wouldn't happen, but knew that it was a distinct possibility. I don't think anybody can look inside Vladimir Putin's head. But the situation we have now clearly is desperate for the people of Ukraine. That's why it's so important that we provide assistance both to Ukraine itself, but also to Poland and the other surrounding countries, and also that we are putting in place a big new humanitarian route, actually 2 new humanitarian routes, to make sure that our country is absolutely playing its part, along with friends and allies elsewhere, to make sure that we welcome and bring to safety people fleeing that conflict. There's an extended family programme, so for people who are here who have extended family in Ukraine or who have just left. So by extended family, that means it could be grandparents, siblings, adult children, and so on. They can bring them to this country, and that alone could be a couple of 100,000 people eligible for that. Then we're also bringing in a community sponsorship program. So even if you don't have, relations, family connection, that a community group here, so that could be, a local organisation, a local council, or a church group or something like that, can step up and say, yeah, we'd like to welcome a family to help them settle, to help the children settle into their schooling, to help them navigate the benefit system, to find work, and so on. So the extended family programme is imminent. That'll be in place tomorrow. The community sponsorship programme takes a little bit longer because obviously there's quite a lot to put in place to make it happen, but we want to do it as soon as possible. Obviously, the British government doesn't have records, doesn't keep records of how many siblings or adult children people may have in another country. And then the community sponsorship programme, the only cap on that effectively is the community sponsors, and I think people will come forward and will want to do that. So, as I say, they're both big programs. Well, look, we want to make it as smooth as possible. People have been through terrible trauma already. I mean, this is mostly, not entirely, but mostly this is mothers and children and single lone females, because men aged 18 to 60 are remaining in country. They have been through the most horrific times. We want to make it as straightforward as possible. But we need to have biometric checks on people, not because of those people, but because of others who, sadly, sad truth is there will always be people who seek to take advantage of a situation like this, and we need to know who's coming into the country, who might be, of course, Russians rather than rather than Ukrainians.
OK, well, there we go. That was Damien Hines there, of course, talking about the latest particular response, I suppose, to welcoming Ukrainian refugees. It's an interesting situation, what's going on there and exactly how, because it's now one of the largest and fastest growing humanitarian crises that Europe's ever seen.
Yeah, 1 million is the figure, isn't it? The latest figure for in terms of people who have fled Ukraine. Let's go to a couple of your views. Kim says they should never be allowed, they being Russia, should never be allowed back in the economic and financial structure ever again until they get rid of Putin. And they think Russia should pay for the destruction of the sovereign state. And that's true. I mean, they've already been massively isolated, haven't they, already? Lots of sanctions, lots of countries have sanctioned Russia and all the oligarchs as well. But Foreign Secretary Liz Truss is currently holding a news conference with a series of Lithuanian officials at the moment. So let's just listen into that.
Meeting. The main things that we have discussed are further support and assistance to Ukraine. We have agreed that we can no longer make half step only. We have to do everything that is possible to support Ukraine in military, in financial, and economic means. And the same applies to sanctions. We cannot say A without saying B. We have to try to ensure that all banks in Russia are cut off from SWIFT. We have to start speaking about the imports of energy resources from Russia. We also should not forget that Belarus is a counterpart of this aggression against Ukraine. And the third element that we have discussed in our meeting today is military support to Ukraine, to the Baltic states, We have to move on from deterrence to defense. And this is why we need a change of political approach. We also need practical means for that. And they are needed for all 3 Baltic states. So that if Putin decides to test NATO resistance in this region, would be responded right away, would get a response, a political response, and also a clear defensive response if that would be needed. Thank you. And now, Secretary of State of the UK.
Thank you, Minister Langbergers, for bringing us here together in Vilnius. The United Kingdom stands with our allies in doing all we can to support Ukraine against President Putin's war of choice. We must ensure Putin fails in this horrific enterprise and his ambitions go no further. We were pleased to support Lithuania's leadership, referring war crimes to the ICC. I'm here today in Vilnius with our Baltic friends because I want to say that the UK's commitment to the Baltics and to Article 5 are unyielding. Our Baltic friends know what's at stake, having long lived in the shadow of Russian aggression, and I admire your courage. We're working together to deliver 2 clear objectives. First, Putin must lose in Ukraine. We're helping Ukraine defend itself. Our defensive weapons from the United Kingdom are now being used to stop Russian tanks, but we need to do more. Secondly, we must contain this aggression. We are reinforcing NATO's eastern flank and supporting European security through the UK-led Joint Expeditionary Force. We are here in the Baltic region. We lead and have doubled our enhanced forward presence in Estonia. Our allies are leading troops across the Baltics. British military intelligence are working with Lithuania's military to enhance border defensive, including in the Suwalki Gap. 200 troops are doing joint military exercises right now, and we're working together on maritime security. At the NATO Foreign Ministers meeting tomorrow, we will be working together to strengthen our collective defence in the light of the changed security situation across Europe. In terms of supporting Ukraine with defensive weaponry, the United Kingdom was the first European country to give defensive military support to Ukraine, and we are now also supporting with the humanitarian aid. We've pledged 220 million in aid support to Ukraine, and we're the top European donor, and we will do more. We've also been at the forefront in tightening the vice on the Kremlin through sanctions, and it's vital at this juncture that we keep our foot on the gas. We've worked with the US, the EU and G7 to cut off funding for Putin's war machine, kicking Russian banks out of the financial system. We've also shut our airspace to Russian planes, and we're fast-forwarding sanctions against Russian oligarchs. But we need to go further. We need to make sure no Russian bank has access to SWIFT. And we need to go further on reducing dependency on hydrocarbons from Russia, including oil, gas and coal. We've also launched sanctions against Belarus for aiding and abetting aggression. I will be raising these issues at the G7 tomorrow and also at the European Union Foreign Affairs Council, alongside the United States, Canada and Ukraine, who have also been invited in these extraordinary circumstances. This is a struggle not just for Ukraine's freedom and self-determination, but for all of our freedom and security. By continuing to respond with strength, we will together ensure that Putin loses. And we stand with our brave allies here in the Baltics to do just that. Thank you.
Estijos užsienio reikalų ministrė Eva Marija Liep. Prašau.
Estonian Foreign Minister.
Well, I would like to thank Gabrielius for bringing us together for this very much needed discussion and coordination among our Baltic friends and together with our very close ally, United Kingdom. We focused mainly on discussing war started by Russia in Europe and how we could support Ukraine more than we have done so far. I think we have done a lot, but I agree that we have to do
OK. Well, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Obviously, that's live in Lithuania. Liz Truss there, we heard talking, didn't she? And she called for an even more united front against Russia. No Russian bank to have access to any kind of SWIFT system whatsoever. Also, of course, as well, they're looking at just bolstering their joint military operations just to make sure, as she puts it, that Vladimir Putin loses.
Yes, well, after the break, we'll bring you the latest. More on the Ukraine crisis from all different angles. That's after the weather.
Hello again. Something of a dull, damp sandwich today. A slice of the country, dull and soggy, but some brighter skies across the east and some sunny spells developing in the far west as well. The reason, we have a weather front kind of stagnating across the UK. There's not a lot of isobars on the chart, so not a lot of wind to shift it. So stuck under this weather front, you're going to see a lot of cloud and outbreaks of rain. Southern and central Scotland, northwest England, much of Wales, down across the Midlands as well. But for the far southwest of England, Pembrokeshire, Northern Ireland, west coast of Scotland, mostly dry and bright. And from Yorkshire down to southeast England, also staying largely fine. And here, the top temperature's 10 in Hull, 13 in London, but stuck under that rain band, 7 or 8 in Newcastle and Manchester at the very best. And that rain bands will only slowly work further eastwards through the night. So staying pretty soggy, the rain pepping up across eastern Scotland, pushing more widely across northeast England, perhaps turning a lot drier across Wales overnight, but we'll keep a lot of cloud. That'll help to keep the temperatures up, but with some clearer skies. South Wales, Northern Ireland, temperatures may dip close to freezing. Under that zone of cloud and rain, though, temperatures will hold up. But it will feel cold again here through Friday. East coast of Scotland, northeast England, parts of East Anglia, maybe still into parts of the Midlands. Dull, damp, dank again. A bit more rain across the southeast of England on Friday compared to today as well. But further west again, generally dry, a brighter day across the Midlands, although still predominantly cloudy and still quite chilly with temperatures suppressed in single figures where we've got that rain, which is likely to linger in parts of the east even into the weekend. So we'll continue to see some outbreaks of rain across southeast Scotland, eastern parts of England on Saturday. Elsewhere, many places will be dry and bright with some sunny spells in the west and staying largely dry into Monday as well, and also turning colder.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel.
Right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good morning, it's 10:29 and this is To The Point with me, Mercy Muroki, and Patrick Christys on GB News, live on your TV, online and radio.
Yes, indeed. Well, as the war in Ukraine continues, supplies are being gathered in their truckloads by British volunteers to send to Poland and Ukraine. Our reporter Amelia Harper has this report on the volunteers responsible for collecting donations and those driving them across the border into Ukraine.
The Russian invasion of Ukraine is intensifying. But so too is the effort in the UK to help Ukrainian refugees and soldiers. After a call out on social media, this house in Cambridge, now a storage facility for supplies to be sent to the Ukraine-Poland border. Volunteers creating packs of donations for both civilian refugees and for the Ukrainian soldiers.
Okay, so you are in charge of the box for 2 children and make them happy. Yeah, whatever they need. Okay, you do it.
Children choosing what children in a war zone might need to survive. Their mother, Alicia, organised the collections.
I woke up to the news and I was crying. That's all I was doing. And I'm sorry. It's okay. I just could not do nothing. I couldn't sit and watch the news. And in more news I was watching, the more overwhelmed I was. And I just can't imagine being in their position. People were coming and coming and coming. Everyone cried.
For Ukrainian volunteers, there's worry that President Putin has sealed their country's fate after the recent bombing of Kyiev's Freedom Square.
It was destroyed completely with a bomb, blast bomb. So I imagination how many people could be dying there. So it was just there to buy a bread. It's horrible.
From here, supplies will be driven to refugees on Poland's border with Ukraine. After that, a handful of volunteers based in Poland are driving into Ukraine to get the packs to soldiers.
So it took us around 2 hours on the way to Ukraine. On the way back, we were actually escorted by the police force, Ukrainian police force, to get to the border as fast as possible. So we skipped all the long queue, which is around 30-40 kilometers. There were checkpoints every 4 or 5 kilometers. there were actually fireplaces where the big barrels, well, they were putting stuff inside to just burn them. And because it was -7 degrees.
From volunteers in Poland to volunteers here in the UK, the need to help others is uniting communities across Europe.
Once someone smart told me that if you save one person, you're going to save the whole world. If helping isn't what makes you human, then I don't know what is.
Amelia Harper, GB News, Cambridge.
Yeah, touching stuff there, isn't it, really, as people come together in order to try to help out the people of Ukraine. Of course, I think it's very, very important that people do that. Now, coming up, a London cabbie brings us his thoughts on the two-day tube strike. I imagine he might be all right with it, actually, because they're doing rather well out of this.
Yes, they are. The queues were long, weren't they?
Unbelievable. It was like a theme park ride. Yeah. Anyway, but we're going to be doing that after this morning's news.
It's 10:33. I'm Rhiannon Jones in the GB newsroom. We begin with some breaking news. A Bangladesh cargo ship has been hit by a missile at the Ukrainian port of Ovia. One crew member has been killed. Conflicting reports, meanwhile, are also emerging on whether the Ukrainian city of Kherson has been seized by Russian troops. UK intelligence shows Russian forces have entered, but the military situation remains unclear. The Ministry of Defence says the cities of Kharkiv, Cherniv and Mariupol remain in Ukrainian hands despite heavy shelling. The convoy advancing on the capital, Kyiv, is also said to have made little progress over the past 3 days. Speaking in Lithuania, Foreign Secretary Liz Truss said Russian aggression must be contained.
Putin must lose in Ukraine. We're helping Ukraine defend itself. Our defensive weapons from the United Kingdom are now being used to stop Russian tanks. We must contain this aggression. We are reinforcing NATO's eastern flank and supporting European security through the UK-led Joint Expeditionary Force.
The International Criminal Court is launching an investigation into alleged war crimes. In the largest referral in the history of the ICC, the UK and 37 allies have called for a probe into Russia's atrocities. It follows reports that cluster and vacuum bombs have been dropped in residential areas. Moscow denies it's targeting civilians. Athletes from Russia and Belarus will not be allowed to compete in the 2022 Winter Olympics. The Games start in Beijing on Saturday. The International Paralympic Committee has reversed its original decision to let them take part under a neutral flag. That announcement, though, was met by criticism and the threat of a boycott. TV online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. More at the top of the hour. Don't go anywhere. Mercy and Patrick are back with To The Point in just a moment.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate.
From all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel.
Right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good morning, everyone. It's just about to go 10:38. This is To The Point with me, Patrick Christys, and Mercy Muroki on GB News. And, of course, we are live on your TV, radio and online this morning.
Yes, now, 1 year ago today, 33-year-old Sarah Everard was walking home from a friend's house, passing through Clapham Common Park in South London just after 9 p.m, but she never made it home that night.
Yeah, gosh, well, Sarah Everard, of course, was kidnapped, raped and murdered by Metropolitan Police Officer Wayne Couzens in a crime that shocked the nation. Couzens, of course, was sentenced to a rare whole-life order, meaning that he will die in prison.
Yes, well, our South East of England reporter Ellie Costello was at Clapham Common this morning.
Very sad day here on Clapham Common, and a day of reflection too, a year on from the abduction and the murder of Sarah Everard, who, as you rightly say, Eamon, was last seen on the road just over here, just on the outside of Clapham Common, and that's where she was abducted by the serving Metropolitan Police Officer Wayne Couzens. So we have started to see the first few tributes being laid here at Clapham Common bandstand. We've also received a statement from the Everard family today. It came through the Metropolitan Police and it reads, "It is a year since Sarah died and we remember her today as every day with all of our love. Our lives have changed forever and we live with the sadness of our loss. Sarah was wonderful and we miss her all the time. Over the past year, we have been overwhelmed with the kindness shown to us, not just by family and friends, but by the wider public." They go on to say that, sadly, Sarah is not the only woman to have lost her life recently in violent circumstances, and we'd like to extend our deepest sympathy to other families who are also grieving. Now, Eamon and Isabel, if you cast your mind back to last year, to March, we were still in lockdown. It was still COVID-19 restrictions, and Sarah was visiting a friend in Clapham, not too far from the Common, and she was walking home to Brixton. It was a walk that was supposed to take an hour. Now, we know that she was stopped by Wayne Couzens, and she was falsely arrested by him under COVID-19 restrictions, and thankfully that was picked up by the CCTV of a London bus that was passing. Wayne Couzens then proceeded to put Sarah Everard in his car and drove her to Kent, where he raped and murdered her. Today we have had the first flowers that have started to be laid there, and I think this is what surprises so many people about this case. Is if you haven't been to Clapham before, it's a really leafy residential part of London. It's nicknamed Little Surrey. Lots of young professionals like Sarah live here, and that was which was so shocking about this case, that Sarah was walking home at 9 p.m. at night. She was sticking to the main roads. She was wearing sensible clothes. She was wearing trainers. She rang her boyfriend, and still she didn't get home safely. And we know that she was abducted and killed by a serving Metropolitan Police officer. And what shocks so many people is Wayne Couzens was somebody that was supposed to be there to protect her as a police officer. But we know from hearing in court that he actually planned the abduction for days ahead, that he arrested Sarah Everard using his warrant card and using his handcuffs as well. So it really was an awful ordeal for poor Sarah, and that's what people have been remarking on in Clapham Common today. A man about an hour ago just placed flowers there and said he had to do something for Sarah. He's got daughters that live nearby and he wanted to pay his respects, and I'm sure that we are going to see lots of people paying respects here at the bandstand. And as you say, Isabel, this is the place where a vigil was held for Sarah Everard on the 13th of March last year, and the Metropolitan Police were criticised at the time for their heavy-handed nature of dealing with that vigil. 4 people were arrested there under COVID-19 regulations, and there was rightly so much sadness and anger amongst the women and men that went to that vigil, because we knew at the time that a serving Metropolitan Police officer was being held in connection with Sarah's disappearance and murder. And we know now that Wayne Couzens did plead guilty to the abduction, the rape and the murder of Sarah Everard, and he is now serving a very rare whole life sentence in prison, which means he will die in jail, and they are very, very rare in this country. Following that vigil here on the 13th of March, there was a report from the Independent Office for Police Misconduct, and they found that misogyny, discrimination, bullying and sexual harassment were uncovered in all ranks of the Metropolitan Police. And the Commissioner for the Metropolitan Police, Cressida Dick, actually resigned just last month. So we're still feeling the shockwaves from this case that really did call into question not only women's safety but also women's trust in the police as well. So a very sad day on Clapham Common, and I'm sure we're going to see tributes continue to be laid throughout the day.
Yes, well, of course, that was Alicia Stella there.
Yeah, it's been
a year.
Yeah.
A year. I mean, I'm sure we can all remember exactly, you know, one of those kind of where were you moments, I suppose, when we realised that Sarah Everard had gone missing, and it kind of built and built and built. That vigil, of course, that the police handled appallingly.
Yes, and it did shock the nation, didn't it? And in fact, it shocked a lot of our institutions into more action. I think actually her death probably triggered so many government policies that have come forward in terms of dealing with violence against women. Some ridiculous proposals as well by the Met Police as well, who didn't exactly show themselves to be very apt at dealing with this.
One of Cressida Dick's solutions was something like flag down a bus.
Yeah.
OK, well, if I'm currently being stalked and potentially about to be kidnapped, I don't think flagging down a bus would do much for me. But anyway, moving away from that now, a new report has suggested that universities with a zero-tolerance approach to drugs are doing more harm than good. This is because it makes students fearful that if they come forward for help, then they will be punished.
Yes, well, the Higher Education Policy Institute suggests a more tolerant, health-focused approach to drug-taking on campus would help combat the problem more effectively. Well, we're joined this morning by Jonathan Nadler, who's CEO and Managing Director at Life Group, the UK's #1 medical cannabis group. Thank you for joining us this morning. So what's your view on this? Because, I'm not sure as a parent if I was a parent of a university-age student, I would necessarily want my child's university to have a relaxed approach to drug taking.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I think this report's phenomenal, and it's the start of something great, hopefully. The point out, the crux of it is zero tolerance just hasn't worked. I mean, we're living with a Misuse of Drugs Act, which is 50 years old, and we've been criminalising the use of illicit drug taking for all of that time and beyond, I believe. And it hasn't worked. We're seeing an increase in the number of drug-related deaths in this country. And lots of those, unfortunately, are students at higher education institutes. So zero tolerance hasn't worked. This report shows that there are better approaches to reduce harm, to educate, to ensure that there isn't diversion, and to really make sure that we protect our population rather than criminalising them.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, you can understand, I suppose, in a way, why universities do have a zero-tolerance approach. I think, as Mercy's rightly said there, maybe many parents would feel more comfortable sending their child away from home, potentially for the first time, to a university that has got a zero-tolerance approach to it. It's also a way of universities to make quite a lot of money as well, because they fine people, don't they, if there's any drug issues, I suppose. So you don't think that by having a more relaxed approach whatsoever to drugs that actually people might stop dying of overdoses and things like that? You think that people would just be able to, I don't know, be responsible with it?
Well, as I say, it hasn't worked. We're seeing more drug deaths than ever before. So the law that's supposed to protect us is not doing what it's supposed to do. I understand your point as a parent. You don't want your child going to university and being involved with things like illicit drugs. But if they are taken, then why should they not be taken in a more controlled manner? So it isn't about criminalising, it's about understanding why they're being consumed. And I think that if you look at some of the root causes of drug taking, you will find that it is to deal and cope with certain things in life, with mental health issues, with trauma, with pain, and so on. We know from our organisation, which has a focus on medical cannabis, that 1.4 million people in the UK are taking cannabis, an illicit drug, according to that law, for medical reason. Why should they be criminalised?
No, indeed. Do you think it is time for maybe a more, how would you say it? Well, I suppose a less outdated approach to drug taking, I suppose you could say. If there are overwhelming numbers of people who are indeed using drugs now, if indeed it is pretty commonplace in society, which I think we can all agree it is a lot of the time now, is it time that we actually just had that kind of different approach to it? You know, the outright banning, as it were, you know, maybe could be a bit outdated.
Exactly right. And as I said, the Misuse of Drugs Act, 50 years old, people have been campaigning for many years to try and get it changed. It hasn't worked, as I say. I mean, there's been well over 250,000 drug-related arrests in 2020-21. It's a real burden on our Metropolitan Police Force and police forces all over the country. And lots of it could be stopped by having a more tolerant approach where we educate, where we look at the root causes, where we understand that there are probably mental health issues underneath some of the taking of illicit drugs to try and help them cope with life. These are the things that we need to be focused on. The harm reduction of use. You know, if people are going to take the drugs, then we should be making sure that our friends and family, because that's who these people are, you know, drug takers are our friends, they are our family. We need to make sure that they are safe.
Well, Jonathan, thank you so much for joining us this morning and talking to us about that. Jonathan Nadler there, CEO, Managing Director at Life Group, which is a medical cannabis group. Yeah, I'm in two minds about it because there is the argument, isn't there, of, well, if people are going to take drugs, they'll take them anyway, so you might as well sort of help them deal with any addiction issues. You might as well help them do it in a safer way rather than banning it altogether. But at the same time, I don't like the message it sends when you say, actually, you can take drugs, but just do it safely. That doesn't sit right with me.
No, I can get that completely. I mean, certainly as well, you know, it's one thing maybe, you know, scaring people potentially, like you see sometimes, you know, some of the headlines, you know, just one puff of cannabis and you get schizophrenia. These kind of headlines, well, they don't do any favours either, because when people do it, as many people do over the course of their lives, for example, or at least try it, and then potentially anyway, they realise that maybe it's not always as dangerous as what these headlines have told them it is, then it almost might kind of takes the idea of any threat out of it, doesn't it? And we don't want that either. So, yeah, it's a very tricky situation.
Well, Stephen here has a solution. Quickly, he says, how about zero tolerance to wokeness and virtue signalling at our universities while they crack down on drug use? Thank you, Stephen, for that.
Yes, indeed. Well, actually, it makes sense, because some of those really woke policies, I would imagine, could only have been concocted if you were on drugs. But anyway, there we go. Tube strikes on all London Underground lines enter their final day today, with commuters and businesses across the capital facing another day of major misery and disruption, replacing them all with robots.
Well, to get a sense of how chaotic the strikes have been and the impact it's had on business owner, we're joined by London cabbie and chairman of the London Cab Drivers Club, Grant Davis. Thank you for joining us. I've seen queues longer than I've ever seen before outside train stations with people waiting for cabs because of tube closures. Must be good for you, right?
Well, it's a double-edged sword, actually, because they always say as a cab driver, you can only do one job at a time. So there's thousands of people wanting cabs, but you can only do that one job at a time. The roads are gridlocked, so when the people actually get in the back of my cab, they're on the phones, they're speaking to business partners, family. They're getting really, really stressed. You know, they're missing trains. They're trying to connect with other people in London. It's a real mess, an absolute mess. And Tuesday was really, really bad. Today's not so bad. But it's disaster for London.
Yeah, massive disruption to lots of people's lives, which I'm sure will cost the economy. What do you make of the strike in general? I mean, can you sympathise with these tube drivers who are saying, look, we're doing this because we're not treated fairly, that our pay and conditions isn't good enough? What do you make of that?
Well, I've got to agree with them, actually, because this time last year and the year before, when we was in lockdown, these workers was getting London moving, going to work, providing the service for London. And because Sadiq Khan, the Mayor of London, has bankrupted TfL and money's in short supply, it's hard-working people that are going to have to suffer for his shenanigans. And this is the trouble we've got in London. You know, TfL are bankrupt. The Mayor's overseen this. The traffic's very, very bad today with this strike. But as taxi drivers and Londoners know, during the pandemic, there's been a whole raft of things called LTNs, where they've shut loads of roads, increased the cycling lanes. So for many Londoners, myself included, gridlock traffic is becoming the norm in London, unfortunately. Not as bad as strike days, but we're just learning to live with the gridlock being caused by the Mayor.
Yeah, well, indeed. And also, actually, ironically, it causes more congestion, doesn't it? So the whole reason of going, let's put a load of cycle lanes in. OK, that's all right. But then what happens is there's less room for the cars to actually move about. So they sit in traffic more often, pumping out fumes, etc., don't they? So it does seem a little bit self-defeating. I take it you're not a massive fan of Sadiq Khan, then?
Have I give that away?
Well, what is it? What is it in particular that you don't like?
I don't know. Where do you want to start? How long does your programme go on for?
We've got another hour.
But basically, well, I mean, LTN, road closures, massive cycle lanes. And for the cab trade, he made us buy electric taxis only from 2018. And listen, I'm not one of these old guys who say, yeah, diesel's good. But from 2018, we had no infrastructure. This Mayor and Transport for London are pushing out the agenda, electric cars. But I could take you out in London. There's just no infrastructure. It's ridiculous. He's put the cart before the horse. And a lot of people are suffering. We've seen with the congestion zone, and then on the outside, the North Circular, the South Circular, you've got to pay another charge. A friend of mine who runs a business come into London in his van. It's cost him £37.50 just to get into central London before he pays for the parking. So what you're actually seeing under this Mayor, although he would argue otherwise, is we are seeing the demise of London as one of the world's greatest cities. When he's finished as Mayor, we'll probably be a shell of the city that we once was. And it's dying. At the London Cab Drivers Club, we have a saying, Patrick, and it's this: a moving city is a thriving city. A gridlocked city is a dying city. And if you look at your screens and see how London is, you'll get what I'm saying.
Absolutely. Look, thank you very, very much for your time and for joining us on the show. Of course, it's Grant Davis there.
Pleasure.
He's chairman of the London Cab Drivers Club. And, he's just saying that basically the city's at a standstill.
Very strong words against Sadiq Khan. And
it doesn't work
so
for
many
his
people would
media
agree.
team.
I mean, Sadiq Khan, when he was running his campaign to get elected, promised no strikes under his leadership. 50 days of strikes there's been since. Another broken promise by a politician. Who would have thought?
Who would have thought it, hey? Absolutely. Anyway, look, keep all your thoughts coming into us right here on GB News, GBViews at gbnews.uk. We'll be back with more of today's top stories and plenty of your views after the break. Stay tuned.
Hello again. Something of a dull, damp sandwich today. A slice of the country, dull and soggy, but some brighter skies across the east and some sunny spells developing in the far west as well. The reason, we have a weather front kind of stagnating across the UK. There's not a lot of isobars on the charts, so not a lot of wind to shift it. So stuck under this weather front, you're going to see a lot of cloud and outbreaks of rain. Southern and central Scotland, northwest England, much of Wales, down across the Midlands as well. But for the far southwest of England, Pembrokeshire, Northern Ireland, west coast of Scotland, mostly dry and bright. And from Yorkshire down to southeast England, also staying largely fine. And here, the top temperature's 10 in Hull, 13 in London, but stuck under that rain band 7 or 8 in Newcastle and Manchester at the very best. And that rain bands will only slowly work further eastwards through the night. So staying pretty soggy, the rain pepping up across eastern Scotland, pushing more widely across northeast England, perhaps turning a lot drier across Wales overnight, but we'll keep a lot of cloud. That'll help to keep the temperatures up, but with some clearer skies. South Wales, Northern Ireland, temperatures may dip close to freezing. Under that zone of cloud and rain, though, temperatures will hold up. But it will feel cold again here through Friday. East coast of Scotland, northeast England, parts of East Anglia, maybe still into parts of the Midlands. Dull, damp, dank again. A bit more rain across the southeast of England on Friday compared to today as well. But further west again, generally dry, a brighter day across the Midlands, although still predominantly cloudy and still quite chilly with temperatures suppressed in single figures where we've got that rain, which is likely to linger in parts of the east even into the weekend. So we'll continue to see some outbreaks of rain across southeast Scotland, eastern parts of England on Saturday. Elsewhere, many places will be dry and bright with some sunny spells in the west and staying largely dry into Monday as well, and also turning colder.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good morning, this is To The Point on GB News with me, Mercy Muroki, and Patrick Christys on your TV, radio and online, here with you until midday with a show full of today's big stories and lots of discussions. And why are you giggling again?
Well, because you nearly read out my name instead of yours.
I do always nearly do that.
Yeah, there you go. Anyway, right, make sure that you get in touch, of course, with your views, gbviews at gbnews.uk. We'll be getting those throughout the show. But first, time for your latest headlines.
Good morning, it's 11 o'clock. I'm Rhiannon Jones in the GB newsroom. A Bangladeshi cargo ship has been hit by a missile at the Ukrainian port of Olvia. The Ukrainian government has posted video purportedly showing the vessel on fire. One crew member has been killed and rescue efforts are underway to save others. Meanwhile, conflicting reports are emerging on whether the Ukrainian city of Kherson has been seized by Russian troops. UK intelligence shows Russian forces have entered, but the military situation remains unclear. The Ministry of Defence says the cities of Kharkiv, Cherniv and Mariupol remain in Ukrainian hands despite heavy shelling. The convoy advancing on the capital, Kyiv, is also said to have made little progress over the past 3 days. Speaking in Lithuania, Foreign Secretary Liz Truss said Russian aggression must be contained.
Putin must lose in Ukraine. We're helping Ukraine defend itself. Our defensive weapons from the United Kingdom are now being used to stop Russian tanks. And it's vital at this juncture that we keep our foot on the gas. We've worked with the US, the EU and G7 to cut off funding for Putin's war machine, kicking Russian banks out of the financial system. We've also shut our airspace to Russian planes, and we're fast-forwarding sanctions against Russian oligarchs. But we need to go further.
Foreign Secretary Liz Truss there. The latest figures from the UN Refugee Agency show 1 million people have fled Ukraine in the past week, but some citizens like Ksenia Donikova believe trying to leave is too dangerous.
This is my home, and so I will stay here, and if somebody will need me, I will try to help. And also it's very dangerous now to go by car to some to the western region, so that's why I'm just stay home.
The International Criminal Court is launching an investigation into alleged war crimes. The International Criminal Court is launching that investigation in the largest referral in its history. The UK and 37 allies have called for a probe into Russia's atrocities. It follows reports that cluster and vacuum bombs have been dropped in residential areas. Moscow denies it's targeting civilians. The Health Secretary has told NHS leaders to stop using energy supplied by Russian-owned company Gazprom. More than a dozen NHS trusts in England are thought to be supplied by the firm, along with several local councils. Last year, the contracts were reportedly worth £16 million. Sajid Javid has also requested a wider review of any Russian role in supply chains across the health service. Athletes from Russia and Belarus will not be allowed to compete at the 2022 Winter Olympics. The Games in Beijing start on Saturday. The International Paralympic Committee has reversed its original decision to allow them to take part under a neutral flag. That announcement was met by criticism and the threat of a boycott. The IPC says the situation in the athletes' villages has become untenable. In other news here, Sarah Everard's family has been paying tribute to her a year after she was murdered by a police officer. In a statement, they say they miss Sarah all the time and have been overwhelmed by the support from the public. Ms. Everard was killed by serving Met Police officer Wayne Couzens as she walked home in South London. Emma Kay, co-founder of the app WalkSafe, says women still feel unsafe on the streets.
The reason why we created it was to try and help inform and empower women, to give them the knowledge that they truly need to be able to keep themselves safer by learning about crime within their local areas. But at the end of the day, Sarah was doing everything right. Sarah could have been myself, Sarah could have been my sister, she could have been a loved one. What happened to her was truly tragic.
The Ministry of Justice plans to close almost half of its Nightingale courts in the UK within weeks. The temporary courts were set up to cope with the backlog of cases during the COVID-19 pandemic. 11 are due to be shut down at the end of the month. The remaining 12 will stay open until March next year. And there's more travel chaos in the capital, with commuters in London facing the second 24-hour tube strike in a week. Members of the Rail, Maritime and Transport Union are in a deadlocked dispute over jobs, pay and pensions. And polls are now open in the Birmingham-Erdington by-election, triggered by the death of Labour frontbencher Jack Dromey. The former leading trade unionist had represented the constituency since 2010. 12 candidates are standing for the seat, with a result expected late this evening. This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens. Now, though, it's back to Mercy and Patrick with To The Point.
Good morning. This is To The Point on GB News with me, Patrick Christys and Mercy Muroki on your TV, radio and online. Here's what we've got coming up in our final hour.
Yes, as always, our security editor, Mark White, will give us the latest from Ukraine, and we'll also be speaking to the executive director of the Ukrainian Helsinki Group for Human Rights about the humanitarian crisis this war is creating.
Yes, the founder of Yes Matters UK, an organisation educating young people about violence against girls, joins us to discuss the one-year anniversary of the kidnap and murder of Sarah Everard. Her family have shared their gratitude for the public's kindness and support.
Yes, and finally, Russian oligarch Roman Abramovich is preparing to sell the Chelsea Football Club's sports broadcaster and journalist Aidan McGee analyses what impact the Ukrainian invasion could have on the world of football and Roman Abramovich's motivations for doing this.
Yes, indeed. We have all of that coming up and much, much more across the programme. You can get in touch as usual. Indeed, loads of you have. GBviews at gbnews.uk. We'll go to them soon.
Now, the Czech government has declared a national state of emergency to take place from tomorrow as they anticipate a major influx of Ukrainian refugees fleeing the ongoing Russian invasion.
Well, many of Ukraine's major cities, including Kiev, Kharkiv and Mariupol, have sustained heavy shelling. In fact, you can see a load of those videos online as well, with the city of Kherson apparently falling to Russian troops. Meanwhile, the 40-mile Russian convoy that was heading to Kiev has stalled due to Ukrainian resistance, mechanical breakdowns and congestion. Well, our security editor, Mark White, joins us in the studio to give us the latest. Mark, what's going on?
Good morning. Yes, I want to highlight, first of all, how the information war is raging just as fiercely as the military battles on the ground. The Ukrainian Ministry of Defence earlier today shared an image that has been very widely disseminated, viewed millions of times, purporting to show a Russian military jet being shot down by a missile launched from the ground. That's the image there, but this is actually from a picture search that we've carried out that shows that image has been used on multiple occasions on different stories dating back at least a decade. And an example there how in these conflicts information is often used or enhanced or even faked to get a particular point across. As always, we can only ever attribute, and we're attributing often to official sources. So the official source on this occasion, the Ukrainian military, who shared an image which is clearly false. That image purporting to show a Russian fighter being shot down. And that doesn't mean that they aren't shooting down Russian aircraft. They are claiming that they have shot down some 6 Russian military aircraft in the past 24 hours. The Russians, for their part, they have had the media up in their helicopters overflying Ukraine, showing the battlefield below. It's clear that they have air superiority, but not necessarily complete control of the air, judging by the reports of downed aircraft as well. But they have overwhelming numbers in the Russian military and air force, and they are up in the skies and clearly feel safe enough to be able, or that it is safe enough to get cameras up there to get some shots of their activities overflying parts of Ukraine. In terms of where the worst of the fighting is continuing, we have had information from our own United Kingdom Ministry of Defence, which is always useful because they have their own intelligence assets in the region. They have satellite imagery, and they say that the cities of Kharkiv and Mariupol and Kherson, there have been intense fighting around those areas. They are encircled by Russian forces. Kharkiv has undergone days now of shelling, missile strikes and attempted incursions, it seems, by the Russian military, but is still under Ukrainian military control. Mariupol, that key port down on the Black Sea, is also, we're told, at the moment, Ukrainian hands. It has not fallen to the Russians, according to the UK Ministry of Defence. But the picture in Kherson is just a little less clear. There have been claims and counterclaims of it being in Russian military control. They've claimed that they've had control of Kherson, And then, of course, the Ukrainian military claim that they are still in control. So it's clear, I think, there are Russian forces on the ground in Kherson, but whether they are actually in control, we don't know at this stage. As for the capital, Kiev, well, again, some heavy bombardment in Kiev, the sound of explosions overnight, and the situation outside in the town of Bodoryanka is pretty concerning. We've got images that have come out from Bodoryanka, which shows a scene of devastation in parts. There are some tanks, burnt-out tanks on the streets, buildings that have been reduced to rubble there as well, and the column, the main armoured column, is still heading down towards the capital, Kiev, according to the UK Ministry of Defence, is still some 30 kilometres from the capital. Slow progress because, in part, due to logistical issues, also fierce Ukrainian military engagements as well along the way, and we've seen some of them there in Bodoryanka. The battle is not just taking place on land, out at sea in the Baltic as well. There have been a number of vessels that have been struck in recent days. The latest, a Bangladeshi tanker, images being shared by the Ukrainian Parliament this time, purportedly showing this tanker from Bangladesh, which had been waiting to offload supplies, struck by a missile at some point yesterday, we believe. And of course, all the while, the refugee crisis continues. We are told that more than 1 million people have now crossed the border from Ukraine into neighbouring countries, and Poland in particular has received more than 500,000 people, but other countries, Hungary, some heart-wrenching images coming from there of mothers with their young children having said previously goodbye to their husbands who are staying behind in Ukraine for the most part to be involved in the fighting. So, as I said at the beginning of this segment here, that image that was shared by the Ukrainian military a little earlier of that military aircraft purportedly shot down, we've seen the images that show that image has been used multiple times, dating back at least a decade. So really an indication, I think, of the information war that continues to rage out there. And when we get images and claims, we try, of course, always to contribute that to other, the sources that they come from.
Mark, thank you very much, and thank you obviously for clearing that up as well. Mark White there, our security editor. And let's cross over to Western Ukraine to talk with Alexander Pavlichenko, who's Executive Director of the Ukrainian Helsinki Human Rights Union. His union is one of the signatories of the Kiev Declaration. Alexander, thank you very, very much. What can you tell us, please, about this declaration, then?
Yeah, thank you for the conversation and possibility to present the document that was prepared by the number of non-governmental organizations. And this Kiev Declarations contains the main proposals in humanitarian field that were elaborated by these organizations, dealing especially with the violations of international humanitarian law and the major violation of human rights. And briefly, we concentrate on the proposals that should facilitate the situation with the flows of the refugees, with the IDPs just mentioned by you. And we have more than 1 million persons who left their houses, and even more, we have the 100,000 who are blocked and remain now in this situation of close or even humanitarian catastrophe, for example, like in Volnovakha, in Severodonetsk, in Shastye, in western region of Ukraine, almost totally blocked is the Chernihiv, for example, with the impossibility for the citizens and for the persons from Chernihiv to left because all the routes are mined. So the first track of this declaration to allow the person to move freely through the humanitarian corridors, so-called green corridors. And till now, it's not open, especially with the control of international structures like UN, for example, OECE. And just remind you that yesterday, one of the officers of OECE was killed in Kharkiv under the shelling attack. Well, very important issue is also to provide the immediate support for the all documentation processes and the conflict, because we have to present and prepare the legal facts, not the information like mentioned by you that is false, that is fake, and we are also in the informational world. And very important was the arrest, the economic measures around the Putin and his commanders or the main responsible persons who have their assets, for example, in the Western countries, and the economic pressure is important. We also urged for immediate delivering of the possible weapon support, including the lethal weapon. And now we receive such weapon. We count on the partner states in this regard, and it helps to resist and to protect not only Ukrainian territory, not only Ukrainian independence, but the values of the civilized world in this conflict that is pure war.
Okay. Look, Alexander, thank you very, very much, and keep up the good work. Obviously, good luck to you and good luck to everyone involved. Alexander Pavlichenko, the Executive Director of the Ukrainian Helsinki Human Rights Union, which of course has indeed signed that Kiev Declaration, which you just heard.
Thank you.
Yes, well, let's go to some of your views now. Lots of them coming in about Ukraine, but also other things we've been discussing this morning. Let's start with the conversation we had about drugs and UVs, taking a less stringent approach on drugs policy, sort of moving away from zero tolerance policy to a more health-based approach. Lots of people getting in touch, actually, and saying, what about the crime that's committed because of people on drugs? Will here says the guy we had on our guest is detached from reality, he thinks, because the police ought to be tasked with arresting drug traffickers. That's how drugs use will see. He thinks drug traffickers should be imprisoned for life without parole. Tracy says, what about the crime caused by drugs? My car was wrecked by a man who was drugged up, and the police were nice to him. I've got life-changing injuries, and they barely did anything. So she's clamping down on drugs as well.
Yeah, look, absolutely. I can see definitely that side of it. Also, lots coming in about Sadiq Khan as well, because, of course, there are still tube strikes. We were promised there will be no strikes on his, 50 days of strikes? 50 days
of strike, yeah.
What can you say? The London Mayor is killing London, but people keep voting for him. Yeah. Maybe they've brought it on themselves. That's from Keith. I'm guessing he's not in London, so yes.
He is in his second term, isn't he? So that's democracy, I suppose.
Yeah, there you go. All right, well, look, keep these views coming in to us. After the break, our reporter Rosie Wright joins us live from an army supplies shop. We've seen a great increase in sales from those wishing to support Ukraine.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and every weekday we bring you The Briefing live from 9:30 a.m. The stories, analysis, and live debate that you need to hear.
Quite right, Tom, of course.
Was this something that had been considered at all?
Difficult to answer.
Gas-guzzling helicopters circling. Noise is being made here.
Joe Biden walking out. Thank you very much for joining us. Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, Monday to Friday, 9:30 a.m. on GB News.
Join me, Gloria De Piero, Monday to Thursday at noon for The Briefing. We go to the parts of Parliament that you won't see elsewhere. Plus, there's exclusive interviews with MPs from all parties.
But quite often, they paper over the real truth. Why does a working class lad like you join the Tories?
That's a good question.
Don't miss it, Monday to Thursdays at noon on GB News.
Good morning, it's 11:24 and this is To The Point with me, Mercy Muroki, and Patrick Christys. On GB News, we're live on your TV, radio and online.
Yes, indeed. Right, well, I understand that we are going to be seeing some pictures from the Polish border. There we go. So we are, I believe they're live, are they? Yeah, they are. And yes, as Ukrainians obviously trying to flee their country. So 1 million people have now fled Ukraine just over a week after Russia invaded the country.
Yes, well, the head of the United Nations Refugee Agency described it as an exodus, saying many millions more inside Ukraine need life-saving humanitarian assistance. So live pictures are there. Let's go to Nadine Dorries, the Culture Secretary, who is currently
Ukrainian
speaking.
tennis player Sergei Stahovsky, who gave a very moving interview on the radio earlier this week. A few weeks ago, he was playing at the Australian Open. Now he's back in Ukraine, preparing to fight for his country's survival. He said that Putin loves nothing better than watching Russia's sports teams glory on the world stage, his athletes draped in the Russian flag. Putin needs the kudos of these global events to conceal his illegitimacy and the hideous acts he is perpetrating in Ukraine. The Russian despot is desperately trying to hide the grim extent of his invasion from his own people. It's why I strongly support and continue to encourage the kind of emotional displays of solidarity we've seen across sporting events in the last week, including the Carabao Cup final and the Six Nations. Lights and symbols cannot stop bullets and bombs. But when Russians see their favourite footballers wearing shirts emblazoned with the bright blue and yellow of the Ukrainian flag, it helps open their eyes to the cold reality of Putin's actions. Likewise, every time an international organisation or figure publicly stands up against what he is doing in Ukraine, they chip away at Putin's wall of lies. So I thank and I applaud all those in this country and internationally that have done so. And I continue to push for organisations to exile Putin's Russia from their ranks. It's why I've called on UNESCO to bar Russia from hosting its annual World Heritage Conference in June. It's absolutely inconceivable that this event could go ahead in Putin's country, as he fires missiles at innocent civilians in neighbouring Ukraine. If it does go ahead, the UK will not be attending. And it's why I urged the International Paralympic Committee yesterday to urgently rethink its decision to allow athletes from Russia and Belarus to compete. Mr. Speaker, this pressure works. The IPC's decision was a wrong call, and I welcome the fact that overnight they have listened and have reversed that decision this morning. Our athletes the best of luck in Beijing over the coming days. Later today, I'll be hosting a summit with countries from all over the globe to discuss how we can continue to use the power of sport to isolate Putin at home and abroad. We have to keep ratcheting up the pressure. Putin must fail. In my department, we've also been working tirelessly to use the power of tech and the media against the Russian dictator, and to shut down and counter his propaganda and lies, because they are key weapons in Putin's arsenal. And so the department's counter-disinformation unit has been working to identify and remove Russian disinformation online. Alongside the US and others, we've also been working closely with platforms to take preemptive action against Putin and to demonstrate the consequences of his brutality in real time to the Russian people. Apple has paused all sales in Russia. Google has had added new safeguarding features to Google Maps and search. WhatsApp is hosting a helpline for Ukraine's state emergency service that sends people information and critical news about their local situation. While big tech has stepped up in a really positive way, we're also encouraging and supporting platforms to go even further to tackle certain challenges, including disinformation, service disruptions, and the humanitarian crisis triggered by the conflict. In this digital age, the Ukrainian war is being fought on the ground and online. And so we need to use tech wherever we can as a force for good, to counter Putin's aggression, to expose his weaknesses, and to bolster the people fighting for their survival in Ukraine. Mr. Speaker, from the very moment Putin began his invasion, I was also very clear that he must not be allowed to exploit our open and free media to spread poisonous propaganda into British homes. Russia Today, RT's own editor-in-chief, called the network an information weapon of the Russian state. And that is why I wrote to Ofcom last week urging them to examine any potential breaches of the broadcasting code. Ofcom has since opened 27 investigations into RT and are now reviewing whether to revoke RT's licence entirely. In the meantime, those investigations have been taken over by events. And I was very glad to see yesterday that the channel is now officially off-air on British televisions after it was shut down on Sky, Freeview and Freesat. In the meantime, I've written to Meta and TikTok asking them to do everything that they can do to prevent access to RT in the UK, as they have done in Europe. And I'm glad that YouTube has already answered this call and done so. Mr. Speaker, we are on the side of free media. That was why it was brilliant to see that the audience for BBC's Russian languages news website has gone up from 3.1 million to 10.7 million in the last week. And despite his best efforts to censor reporting in Russia, Putin's own citizens are turning to factual, independent information in their millions. And at this point, I'd just like to offer my heartfelt thanks and admiration to all of those journalists working for the BBC, the ITV and other news outlets who are risking their lives to bring us unbiased and accurate news from a live war zone. Mr. Speaker, we will keep ratcheting up the pressure on Putin, and I will use all the levers in my department to ensure that he is fully ostracised from the international community.
Now come to Shadow Minister Chris Elmore.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and can I thank the Secretary of State for advance sight of her statement. Can I associate myself and this side of the House with the comments the Secretary of State has made for the courage of the Ukrainian people and those who are returning to fight for their country? Can I add my support to all the journalists who have travelled from the UK and around the world to report on free reporting, challenging Putin's agenda and countering his disinformation. Those journalists are heroes and we owe them a great debt. Mr. Speaker, we are in agreement. Indeed, my honourable friend, the member for Manchester Central, who cannot be here today, has long been calling on the government and sporting and cultural bodies to take tough action against Russian aggression and Belarusian complicity. Our thoughts today are with the Ukrainian people and armed forces. We see acts of heroism day after day and courage beyond words in the face of Putin's illegal invasion. Only a few hours ago, Russian troops took control of the city of Kherson and a stepping stone to the port of Odessa, where Ukraine's main naval port and navy reside. With each passing day, the situation continues to escalate. This situation requires the fullest and strongest possible international response. Across this House, we all recognise the importance Putin and Russia place on participating and succeeding in sporting and cultural events, from chess to ballet to football. So much so that in 2010, when Russia won its bid to host the 2018 World Cup, Putin spoke enthusiastically.
So that was Culture Secretary Nadine Dorries giving a statement about what's going on in Ukraine. She's said she's happy that the Olympics have banned banned Russia from the Olympics, and also the channel RT has been taken off British screens as well. That's what she mentioned there. All in all, Russia being excommunicated both economically and culturally, it would seem, as well, from the Western world.
Yeah, obviously, and I think this is obviously one of the ways that they really want to get at Putin, isn't it? If he and his cronies or those around him really start suffering financially, but also culturally, as Mercy's just said there, then maybe there will be an impact on him being taken down from within, as it were. But I believe we're going to go over and do the latest headlines now. Is that right? So let's do it.
It's 11:34. I'm Rhiannon Jones in the GB newsroom. A Bangladeshi cargo ship has been hit by a missile at the Ukrainian port of Olvia. The Ukrainian government has posted video purportedly showing the vessel on fire. One crew member has been killed, and the Bangladeshi government says rescue efforts are underway to save others. Meanwhile, conflicting reports are emerging on whether the Ukrainian city of Kherson has been seized by Russian troops. The UK's Ministry of Defence says the cities of Kharkiv, Chernihiv and Mariupol remain in Ukrainian hands despite heavy shelling. The International Criminal Court is launching an investigation into alleged war crimes. In the largest referral in the history of the ICC, the UK and 37 allies have called for a probe into Russia's atrocities. It follows reports that cluster and vacuum bombs have been dropped in residential areas. Moscow denies it's targeting civilians. Athletes from Russia and Belarus will not be allowed to compete in the 2022 Winter Paralympics. The Games start in Beijing on Saturday. The International Paralympic Committee has reversed its original decision to let them take part under a neutral flag. That announcement, though, was met by criticism and the threat of a boycott. And some news just in. Formula One has terminated its Russian Grand Prix contract. It follows the announcement last week to axe September's event in Sochi from this year's calendar. TV online and DAB Plus radio, this is GB News. Don't go anywhere. To the point, we'll be back in just a moment.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate.
From all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel.
Right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Yes, good morning, everyone. It is 11:38. I'm Patrick Christys, and I'm joined, obviously, as ever, by Mercy Muroki. I say as ever, you weren't in yesterday with Tom Harwood yesterday.
I wasn't. I did see you start the show with this isn't Mercy.
No.
Really.
Well, I was worried what he'd done with you.
Yeah.
Well, if you got missing or something, anyway.
Maybe he was identifying as a...
Yeah, well, that's the word.
Or I was identifying as a white male yesterday.
Well, there you go. Anyway,
moving on.
We are live, believe it or not, on your TV, online and radio this morning.
Yes, well, now, there's been a huge surge in demand for army equipment here at home. It's been sold to people from surplus stores who either want to send equipment to Ukraine or go to fight themselves.
Well, GB News' presenter Rosie Wright is in Southampton at Frontline Army Surplus Store right now. Thank you very much, Rosie. What's going on?
Yeah, a very good morning to both of you. Just to give you an idea on this Southampton street, I've had one customer come in this morning who's a student just looking for some kit to play airsoft, but the phone's been ringing and it's people saying, do you have bulletproof vests? We're going to Ukraine. One lady saying, I'm going tonight. And the reality is, you can see what kind of stock this shop has. Lots of shops like this getting persistent phone calls saying, please, we need equipment and we need it now. They're asking for things like bulletproof vests. They haven't got any of those. Things that might protect you from shrapnel. If there are any supplies left, there's very few. Chris can tell us more. Chris is the co-owner of this shop. Just talk us through that phone call you had with the woman this morning who said she's going to Ukraine this evening.
Yeah, there was a lady phoned up and she was asking for a Mark IV protection vest, which I wouldn't know where to get from at the moment at the best of times. But with everything that's going on, there will be no supplies left because people have been mass buying them to ship out to there for the people.
And when you say mass buying, a helmet like this that I've got in my hand now, normally you'd sell how many of these?
I would sell one of them every 3 months on average as a collector's item. I wouldn't sell it from much else than that. But on Tuesday I sold the 8 that I had within 4 hours.
And that's the reality. All of these shops like yours are just being cleared out of stuff.
That's it. And the people that supply us, the main dealers, the people are going direct to them as well, so we can't even restock our shops to help people out.
What kind of conversations are you having with people when they come in here? Do they look ready to go to war?
Some of the individuals that have come here seem woefully unequipped or lacking the knowledge they need to go to these places, and it does cause concern, and others know what they're doing. I try the best to advise them, but I'm not the one that's going to these war zones, you know.
Because the reality is, Ben Wallace has said it really is against government advice to only go if you've got some military training, if you're absolutely determined. The people you've spoken to, does that seem like where they are?
There seems to be a split of half them are ex-military and know what they're doing. Others, they have the courage, they want to go and help. They can't just stand by and watch what they see on the news. But sometimes just the desire doesn't actually mean you're going to be helpful.
I really got the impression this morning, and we've looked through some of the messages that Chris has been receiving, that there is just this huge volume of people, and granted this was a lot more, I think, a couple of days ago, who are just desperately trying to get their hands on kit.
Yeah, it is. They want the kit to go out there and to do their bit and help. But I say, it's not just the individuals that are buying it, it's people buying it en masse to ship out there to the people already there.
And the kit that you could even provide wouldn't be sufficient, really?
Not for what the threats they're going to be exposed to. I don't have the equipment that they need to defend themselves from that.
Chris, thank you very much for talking to us and letting us sort of station ourselves over this course of the morning just to meet the people coming in, hear those phone conversations. And I read some of the messages that Chris has been receiving, just saying, what kit do you have? Can I get it now? And often with these very tight timelines, I'm going to Ukraine tonight. As I said, that is not the advice of the UK government, but the people and the customers Chris has been speaking to are determined that they're going to go.
Rosie, thank you very, very much for bringing us that report. Rosie, right there in Southampton. Now, it's interesting. I mean, what would you... I mean, I was going to say, would you ever go and fight? But no, it's not really your bag, is it?
I'll have you know.
It wouldn't be mine either.
Well, put it this way, I wouldn't go to Ukraine to fight,
No.
personally. I think that would be a stupid decision on my part, personally. But if this was happening in the UK, then yes, sign me right up. I'd be...
Yeah,
I'd go fight for
a lot of people
England.
in the inbox have been saying that they are concerned that maybe if something similar happened here, that there will be fewer people fighting for the country. But anyway, hopefully we never find out. Anyway,
I think it's a worthy hill to die on. Let's put it that way. When you're
Yeah.
defending your country and defending your freedom and democracy, that's a noble fight.
Indeed. Well, look, moving away from that now, something sadly much closer to home, actually. 1 year ago today, 33-year-old Sarah Everard was walking home from a friend's house, passing through Clapham Common Park in South London just after 9 p.m. But, of course, she never made it home that night.
Yes, Sarah Everard was kidnapped, raped and murdered by Metropolitan Police Officer Wayne Couzens in a crime that really did shake the nation. Couzens, of course, was sentenced to a rare whole-life order, meaning he will die in prison.
Indeed. Well, Gemma Aitchison is the founder of Yes Matters UK, an organisation that supports child victims of sexual violence, which Gemma obviously founded after her little sister, Sasha Marsden, was violently attacked and murdered at just 16 years old. Gemma, thank you very much for joining us. Obviously, the Sarah Everard case kind of shot violence against women, I suppose, back into the spotlight, sadly. Do you think there's any chance of it getting better anytime soon in terms of public awareness and things like that, or do you think this is just a problem that's actually getting worse?
I don't think anything has changed. I think the only thing that has been different has been the response. So police and stuff like that are showing online, look at all the good stuff we're doing now, as though that sort of drowns out the other problems. When it comes to conviction rates, when it comes to domestic homicide figures, when it comes to domestic abuse figures, all those things, none of those are going down. And the money that's provided for those services, that money's not going up. So nothing has changed at all now.
And do you think, I mean, obviously it's such a worthwhile fight, isn't it? You know, fighting to improve the situation of women and girls across the country. And it's a fight that should never end. But do you sometimes feel a bit hopeless? Because, as you say, the change doesn't seem to be happening fast enough when it comes to this issue.
It is a little bit like there's just been an earthquake and you have one dustpan and brush and you're trying to clean it up. But, you know, we do make progress. It's International Women's Day next week, and one of the things that our organisation has done is to create a video. So we have the suffragettes, and people said the suffragettes were going too far, they were extreme, and then when we wanted girls to have education, that was too extreme. But if those fights hadn't happened, we wouldn't have had female doctors who had helped to create the COVID vaccine. So although it can seem hopeless, with each fight of one generation or one feminist campaigner or what have you, it creates a platform for the next and the next and the next. And although progress is really slow and it's very frustrating, stopping the fight is also not an option.
Yeah, no, of course, you've got to keep going with it, otherwise it won't drive any change, will it? And that's the thing. It's, I mean, it hardly seems like it's been a year, really, if you think about it, from the Sarah Everard thing. I mean, again, I can remember exactly where I was when we found out, and it's really started to build and build. What do you make of the police's response to that Sarah Everard vigil, Gemma?
I think it was hard to watch that and the rules that applied to those women, and then, like, 2 days later, you saw a load of I think there had been some sports event and they were like destroying things in the street and things like that, and police weren't doing anything. And whilst I acknowledge that the police themselves are humans and they have to do risk assessments on their safety and things like that, it reinforces that there's a rule for one set of people and there's a rule for another set of people. I don't think it was handled well. I don't think any of the issues around police and their behaviour and addressing misogyny in the police has been dealt with well at all.
And just finally, obviously, Wayne Couzens was given that rare whole life order. I think about 60 people in the UK, in the whole of the UK, are currently serving whole life orders, meaning life will really mean life and they'll die in prison. Do you think that actually increasing sentencing and taking this issue more seriously when it comes to handing down sentences to people found guilty of abusing or killing women could go a long way into at least some sense of justice?
I think convicting them in the first place would be helpful. As I've said before, these crimes, including with Wayne Couzens, they're serial and escalating offences. So if you don't convict them, then those perpetrators will do it again and they will get worse. And so they perpetrate and perpetrate and perpetrate until there is a dead body at the end. These are things that are directly connected. So the reason violence against women and girls is going up is because there is no conviction of it. One thing that myself and some other organisations decided to do was to come together and to create something called The Clear Path. And that would be holding the justice system to account regarding justice to women and girls, that we're trying to get the government to support and to take on with people such as Patrick said when I was last on here, people who are experts in perpetrator behaviour, people who have the knowledge to really address these things.
Yeah, indeed. Look, Gemma, thank you so much yet again for your time. Keep up the good work and good luck with everything that you are doing. Gemma Aitchison there, of course, the founder of Yes Matters UK, an organisation that helps support child victims of sexual violence. Well, moving away from that now, Russian oligarch Roman Abramovich has announced he will sell Chelsea Football Club. He's owned it for nearly 20 years, and quite a lot of success as well, it's fair to say, but this is in light of the ongoing situation in Ukraine. He says he will not ask for any loans to be repaid, with the proceeds of the sale going to be donated to war victims. Yes, well, Aidan McGee is a sports broadcaster and a journalist, and he joins us now. Good morning, Aidan. Isn't his motivation for this, for selling off Chelsea Football Club, really because the government might very well sanction him very soon, and that would have a massive impact?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you're seeing Russian oligarchs all over the country trying to, or even other countries actually trying to hide their wealth in different parts of the world to try and avoid the threat of sanctions. Now, the initial plan from Roman Abramovich, as we saw on Saturday, was very peculiar timing, just 24 hours before a Carabao Cup final at Wembley against Liverpool, which, of course, they lost on penalties. But he handed over the stewardship of the club to a board of trustees of the Chelsea Foundation, which he set up himself back in 2010. Now, the issue with that is that the actual trustees weren't informed with too much notice and quite rightly pushed back and said, well, actually, this might be in contravention of some of the rules set out by the Charities Commission. They may not be able to carry on and run the club on those terms. So that was through a bit of a spanner in the works from Abramovich's point of view. There's also the issue of how quickly he needed to sell the club. So that was a kind of holding position, as I said on your show on Saturday. But I think the realisation was over the weekend, and once the match was out of the way on Sunday, is that he had to act much, much quicker. Now, the issue he's got now is that if he really does want £2.5 billion for this club, then these deals, in my experience, don't happen that quickly. This isn't 2003 where he can pop into London and pay £140 million for Chelsea Football Club from Ken Bates, knowing that within weeks it was going to go into administration. There is a desperate situation here because this time he's the seller. He's got to find somebody around the world who's prepared to pay £2.5 billion and commit their time to run this club. So if you look, for example, at Hans-Jörg Weiss in Switzerland, worth £4.3 billion, he said that he's one of 4 people to have been asked about taking over the club, but he said he would only do it as part of a consortium. So he's then got to raise interest from 3 other parties. That doesn't happen overnight. Hans-Jörg Weiss is 86 years old. Is he going to be able to run and sustain the club, or even on a subsistence level, for a short period of time if he's not committed to it completely? He sounds a bit old to get involved with something to me. I certainly wouldn't want to be running my club, Queen's Park Rangers, when I'm 86.
No, indeed. Conor McGregor's piped up as well. Any chance of him getting involved?
Conor McGregor? No, I must have missed that one. What did he say?
Well, he basically said he's interested in exploring the possibility of buying Chelsea. I'm not sure he's got the resources either. I don't know. He might.
No, listen. Don't get me wrong. He's a wealthy guy on account of not being very good at what he does. Apart from rabble rousing, but no, he's not going to be taking over a Premier League football club. That's absolutely certain. But in all seriousness, there are very few people who can actually go through with this transaction. £4.3 billion, and even then, Hans-Jörg Weiss, if he's interested, has to jump the interest of 3 or 4 other people, maybe even more, if he's going to get this deal through. The other problem they've got, of course, Patrick, and no one's really mentioned it, is the stadium. Do you remember Roman Abramovich pulled away from building the new stadium because it was a £1 billion cost back in 2018. He sensed some hostility from the UK government in the aftermath of the Salisbury poisonings, that they were going to make it quite difficult for Russian people of influence to operate as they have done in the last 20 years throughout London. So he pulled away from that. Someone who comes in, even though the revenue sheet is not too bad at Chelsea, yes, they made a £146 million loss last year, but that was because of the COVID situation. The year before, though, they made a £40 million profit. So the place can be profitable. It has been profitable recently, but you've got to try and build that stadium. It holds 42,000 people compared to West Ham, which is getting up towards 66, Arsenal 60, Tottenham 60, even other stadiums around the country, much, much bigger. Chelsea are lagging behind on that point of view, or in that regard, and their postcode is one of the most expensive in the world. It's not going to be an easy thing to do to rebuild that stadium.
No, indeed. Aidan, look, thank you very, very much. Great to have you on the show, as always. Aidan McGee there, of course, sports reporter, just essentially whizzing you through what the latest is regarding Chelsea and Abramovich's fire sale, really, of that football club. Bad times for Chelsea fans, potentially, although you never know, I suppose, really. I mean, as Aidan was saying there, it would have to be someone with very deep pockets to buy it, so you would assume that they'd still be able to maybe maintain some success.
Yes, well, it won't be a Russian oligarch, will it? That's for sure. That'll be another one. Let's just end with some of your views. Kerry here says, why are the women not fighting? We are supposed to operate under equality. Hopefully equality would happen if conscription in this country, if conscription applied. There are lots of women actually taking up arms to fight the Russians. But of course, there's a lot of women being prioritised in terms of getting the refugees out, because women and children are more vulnerable, of course. Yes, that's contested. That will be contested, but...
Yeah, well, it's true. Yeah, well, there you go, really, isn't it? And, yeah, lots of people are also getting in touch just to wish people of Ukraine good luck, essentially, really, and also praising us for calling out what did appear to be a essentially a fake picture that was put out by, unfortunately, by the Ukrainian.
Yeah, I mean, so it was put out on their Twitter, the Ukrainian Ministry of Defence, this image, which is not the image of the actual Russian jet being shot down, that particular event. It's an old image. But looking online, people are saying that's not the point. It's illustrative, but it's still very misleading, isn't it?
Yeah, indeed. Of course it is. But look, thank you very much, everybody who's been tuning in. That is it from us here at To The Point, but don't go away. Up next is a briefing with the wonderful Gloria Del.
Hello again. Something of a dull, damp sandwich today. A slice of the country, dull and soggy, but some brighter skies across the east and some sunny spells developing in the far west as well. The reason, we have a weather front kind of stagnating across the UK. There's not a lot of isobars on the chart, so not a lot of wind to shift it. So stuck under this weather front, you're going to see a lot of cloud and outbreaks of rain. Southern and central Scotland, northwest England, much of Wales, down across the Midlands as